Yeah, so we've just discussed Sauron and Isildur, who are the two ring bearers thus far. But Johnny, I just wanted to ask you who, in the correct order now, who are the next people to have touched the ring? So we have Sauron, he's number one. Isildur, who is the next person to touch the ring?
Well, the river Anduin was the third. Bore it for over 2,000 years.
Yeah, exactly. That's the longest ring bearer.
Longest ring bearer, yeah. Which is it's a inside joke. So Deagle would have been the next person to touch the ring for a very short period of time, and then soon to be passed on to Smeagol or Gollum.
Yeah. So this happened in the year 2463 of the Third Age. Yeah, of the Third Age. Johnny, I just wanted to ask you as well, why didn't Gollum become a ring wraith like the Nazgul? Because he possessed the ring for over 500 years, and we can see how the Nazgul are just men and they slipped into the wraith world. Why not Gollum?
It's a good question. There's probably a couple of different reasons. I would say, first of all, the ring is not the same as the 9 that were given to the ring wraiths, so we don't know if Gollum. I mean, also there's the other thing about how the period of time. We know that Gollum had it for 500 years. It's a very long period, but we know that the ring wraiths had it for much longer than Gollum as well. They had it for, I think it's speculated it's minimum 2,000 and it could be up to around 4,000 years that they had them. We're not exactly sure on those numbers, but it's definitely at least 4 times longer than Gollum had it. So maybe it's a question of time, but also, as I said, the 9 rings that were created when Sauron made the one ring, the purpose of those 9 were to basically be controlled by the one, and that the bearers of those 9 would become wraiths eventually. So we don't know if Gollum had the one ring for 2,000, 3,000 years. We don't know if he would have actually ever become a wraith. It's possible as well, I suppose. It is definitely possible. Also, I don't believe he actually... The other thing, another point would be that the ring wraiths wore their rings on their fingers the entire time. And I think Gollum maybe wore it sometimes, but very often kept it in his pockets.
In his pockets. Yeah, that's correct. He actually... I don't think Gollum actually particularly liked wearing the ring. He kind of found it too freaky, too scary. I think actually straight away after he kills Deagle, when he goes back to his village, he didn't like how nobody could see him and he was invisible. And also it affected him in his ability to hunt and go fishing. But and that's another thing. You brought up the point of the ring wraiths having the rings for so much longer, like between 2,000 and 4,000 years. But I've always, I don't know, is it just my own head canon or what? But I always just imagined that they fell into wraith-like beings almost immediately. I don't know why.
Definitely not immediately.
Not immediately, but like actually, I feel like it was like they quickly turned, or there's a line in the book somewhere that it's like the men fell quite quickly.
Well, we know that
maybe it's just in comparison.
Men are little bitches anyway as well, and they're just like they're so weak. Yeah, men are weak. Men
are weak.
So we that could also be like, I mean, I think we saw that dwarves obviously didn't fall at all the same way that the men did, because they're just hardier folk, and the same with the hobbits. We found out that that's one thing, that they're just really, sturdy and hardy, and just like, they have a stronger spirit, I suppose, that they don't get corrupted as easily. And men were just always known as the easiest to corrupt. So maybe they just were, maybe it was easier for them to be corrupted in a shorter time. Now, I'm just almost going to retract what I said before, because the ring rates, I'm just trying to remember different figures. I remember that they had them, I think it was between 2,200 years up to 4,000 years. I think that's around the period that they may have had the rings. But I think they had been converted into ring rates before that period of time. That's the length of time that they possibly held their rings in total. But I think maybe, I'm trying to remember, I think it was when they were given the rings, I think maybe about 600 years later was when they first emerged on the scene. So it's probably actually a similar length of time to Gollum. I need to go back and check these figures. If you're listening or watching,
it is probably
this,
because they wore it all the time.
Yeah, if you're watching this, please go and look into that yourselves, or leave us. Actually, even better, leave us a comment.
Google it
and let us know, because we clearly are not very sure on these numbers.
Teach us. We're learning. It is, it's notable as well that this is our first clue to the natural resilience of hobbits to the powers of the One Ring, and why Bilbo and Frodo were less affected than probably most other races. And that's why it's no coincidence that the story of the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit has a hobbit as its central character.
Hobbits truly are remarkable creatures.
'Tis in men that we must place our trust.
You can learn all there is to know about the ways in a weekend, but over 100 years they can still surprise you. I definitely didn't get that quote right, but anyway.
Yeah. Is it 1 month, I think he says?
I can't remember.
Or 3 months? You can learn all there is to know about...
He didn't say it in like an exact...
No, I don't know.
I think he said in...
He says in a month, or in... I think he says a month.
I hardly says
I don't know. Send us a comment.
Yeah.
Interact.
All there is to know about... I'm forgetting more and more of it as I go.
Yeah.
Never
You
mind.
can learn all the ways in a month, but after
100
3
years.
years. 100 years.
Hobbits really are amazing creatures. You can learn all that there is to know about their ways in a month, and yet after 100 years, they can still surprise you.
Anyways, let's move on. So, Johnny, yes, Smeagol and Smeagol were the next to touch the ring in 2463 of the Third Age. Who would be the next person to touch the ring?
Well, obviously, Bilbo got it from Smeagol. So
Bilbo Baggins.
Bilbo,
Yes, that is correct, in 2941. Now, I just wanted to ask, why wasn't Gandalf overly concerned when he noticed Bilbo's magic ring in the beginning? So this would be in The Hobbit, I suppose.
yeah, again, I think we spoke about this in our 3 Elven Rings episode, where we said that the Rings of Power, the 19 of the Rings of Power out of the 20 that were created, 19 of them had big gems or stones in these rings, whereas the One Ring did not have any gem. And that would make you think, oh, well, it should have been very obvious. But then we also spoke about how that there were these other rings called the Lesser Rings that were almost like kind of practice rings made before they started working on the they were like the beta models of the rings before they started working on the actual Rings of Power. So that was in like about a 200-year period, building up to the starting working on the actual Rings of Power. So they made loads of these little lesser rings, which probably just didn't have many powers. Like they probably made you turn invisible, maybe, or they probably had small little things. But we don't actually know much about the lesser rings, what powers they had. But
yeah, I'd love to know more about the lesser rings.
There were plenty of those just knocking about, however. So I imagine Gandalf, when he saw it, he was like, it's probably just one of those lesser rings.
Probably, yeah. That's exactly.
And sorry,
right.
I don't know if I mentioned,
answer.
but they would have looked very, very similar to the One Ring because they did not have any gems or stones. They were just plain bands. And
just a golden band. Yeah, exactly. I also just have a side fact here that Bilbo was the only ring bearer that willingly gave up the ring. So I thought that was cool. So after Bilbo, who do we have next?
Let me see. After Bilbo, so obviously then Bilbo gives it to Frodo. Gandalf doesn't touch it at that time. So Frodo would be the next one, yeah?
Yeah, well, Frodo and Gandalf both in the year 3001 of the Third Age. They both touch it at the same time, and we don't really need to get into that much, but the difference between the films and the books, I suppose, is that the whole film takes place over, like the Fellowship of the Ring takes place over 1 year, whereas in the book, at the start, Frodo and Gandalf obviously have the ring, and then Gandalf fecks off to Minas Tirith for 17 years to learn about what this ring is about, and then he comes back in the year 3018 of the Third Age. But if we're going by book lore, who would be the next person in the year 3018 to touch the ring?
I'm just trying to get my orders correct. So so as we said, Frodo and Gandalf both touched it at that time, I suppose. I was trying to remember. I thought that like obviously Frodo had it, and then Gandalf showed up one day and was like, "Oh, let me see that ring," and he started to tell Frodo a bit about the ring or something like that. And because we get that also in the book, just in, also another thing to note is that in the book Gandalf definitely does hold the ring in his hand, and I think there's a really famous drawing. I think it's by maybe Ted Naismith of both of them sort of sitting down, Gandalf sitting down by the fire and Frodo standing beside him, and Gandalf's like holding the ring up and looking at it, kind of examining it. So he does hold it in his hand, cool whereas in the movies he only holds the envelope once, and then he holds it by when he picks it out of the fire
tongs.
With the tongs and says, "It's quite cool." So just,
it's quite cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. So that's just something that we know that in the books he does hold it in his hand. So that's just a small difference. So he becomes an official bearer, I suppose, when he holds it in his hands. So they touch it at the same time. Then Frodo leaves the Shire, and I suppose the next person will be Tom Bombadil, right?
Exactly. Yeah, Tom Bombadil in the year 3018. I don't know how to say these dates sometimes. So Johnny, what do we know about Tom and the ring? I know we've discussed it a lot before, but to summarize it.
Yeah, so it is quite a unique experience with the ring because we've no idea what kind of a creature Tom is, and there's millions of different possibilities and different theories, I suppose, out there on who he could be. But he definitely interacts with the ring in a way that we've never seen before, which is that he's completely... Now, you said also as well that Bilbo was the only one who gave it up freely. I suppose, now again, that's, I suppose, when he's...
Well, he's the only ring bearer that gave it up freely.
And maybe the only person who was actually starting to be controlled by the ring and sort of fought against that power. Whereas Tom Bombadil just seems to have no effect on him whatsoever. He holds it, he's like playing with it, he puts it on his finger and he doesn't become invisible, but he turns the ring invisible. He's doing all sorts of little sort of parlor magic tricks with it, and like sleight of hand. He's like, slipping it like it is like, oh, you think it's in this hand? It's actually in this hand, and all this kind of stuff. So,
they're just looking at this like ring of power that has the fate of Arda and Middle Earth in his hand, and
he's just like, it was behind your ear the whole time.
Yeah, it's like having like a newborn baby child and pretending to drop it. It's like, Tom, take it easy. Like we need this thing to save humanity.
Yeah, for the love of God, Tom.
Yeah, but you're absolutely correct. One of the weirdest things is that he doesn't turn invisible, but the ring turns invisible. But like we said, we have a whole episode on Tom Bombadil. So if you want to learn more about that experience, please go back into our archives and check out that episode, because we have many theories to discuss there, and you'll learn more about that complete enigma named Tom Bombadil. But yeah, I think when I was saying earlier about the ring bearers, if we look at all the actual ring bearers, we have Sauron, who doesn't give up the ring, it's cut from his finger. Then we have Isildur, who is betrayed by the ring, and then we have Gollum, who obviously loses the ring, and then we have Bilbo, who's the only one that actually... Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, was he? He was ring bearer.
He fought to death over it, I suppose.
Yeah, so like you can see in every case, and we'll get into other people that don't willingly give up the ring. But moving on, that was in 3018. Who would be the next person to touch the ring?
Let me see. So they leave Bombadil. There's the next person would be a kind of a sneaky person that we don't actually know any information about.
Sneak.
So
Sneaky.
So basically the next part that I'm going to talk about is where Frodo gets stabbed at Weathertop, and then he gets rushed to Rivendell, and he gets healed by Elrond. And at that point, when he is being cured and he's like trying to recover from his injury, he's lying in bed, and he's obviously not wearing the ring around his neck. He had put it on his finger during that fight, and then he gets stabbed. He takes it off, and it's still in his hand. And when he wakes up, and then basically, well, again, in the book, it's not just like he passes out immediately. He actually continues on walking for another like few days or something before he actually passes out. But I'm pretty sure he doesn't have it on its chain, and then he kind of passes out, goes to Rivendell, wakes up, and it's back on its chain again. And so we know that there's a mystery person in Rivendell who has obviously put the ring back on its chain. So that, again, this is just a very minor detail, but again, it's something that people very often bring up online, this question of who was the person who picked up the ring and obviously passed the chain through the ring and put it back and all that kind of stuff. So that's just a small little, maybe again, it doesn't count as a bearer of the ring, but somebody who just touched the ring is a pretty unique thing in Middle-earth as well.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. Well done on remembering that. We discussed it in a previous podcast, but like I didn't know if you were going to remember that or not. But
Neither did
you
I.
did say there, you did mention there how it was on his chain to begin with. But I don't think he had a chain at first before Rivendell, did he? I think, I'm not sure. I just thought that he had the ring on its own, and when he woke up in Rivendell, that was the first time that he actually had the chain. But
Can't remember, but maybe that's the
I can't really remember, but yes, it was one morning. He found the ring passed through a chain for him, and it's not known what persons did this while he was sleeping. It could have been Elrond, it could have been Gandalf, it could have been a high elf of Rivendell, but their identity and the process and whether they touched it or not, because they could have used tongs or really
could have just been the cleaner.
Gloves.
Like just
Yeah,
cleaners in there,
exactly.
like emptying the bins and just like, oh, there's a ring here, there's a chain. I'm just gonna put this on here for you. It's like unlimited power.
Oh, I'd love to see that. I'd love to see like a Consuela from Family Guy just like finding the ring of power and is like, I put on. Oh, it'd be brilliant. So yes, that would bring us on to the last person to have touched the ring. Well, not the last person to touch the ring, but the last new person to touch the ring. So who would that be?
There's only one person. Well, then Sam. Sam was the last
Yeah.
person to the last new bearer, I suppose. And he had it for one day.
So this was I think it was March 3019. Yeah, because that's when the ring is destroyed. So he had it for 2 days, and
2 days.
I wanted to ask you, how did the ring affect Sam during his 2 days as ring bearer?
How
ring
did
toucher.
it affect him? I mean, it's more of a bearer than, if he had it for a couple of days, that's quite a while compared to, for example, people like Deagle, who picks up the ring and in 5 minutes is like, I will kill my cousin for this ring or whatever.
That's true.
So,
I'm feeling less and less confident with my fact of Bilbo giving up the ring freely as being the only one to do it now. I don't know where I got that from, but yeah. Anyways.
So yeah, Sam, he does become a bearer, I suppose, and so yeah, he gives it up freely as well. We see. Sam, how does it affect him? He kind of has some visions and imagines himself being like this great ruler of men, and he calls himself Samwise the Strong.
Yes.
I always think of
Samwise
Samwise
the
the
Strong.
Brave. I always think Samwise the Brave because of the other thing where Frodo mentions it in the movies, and
Yeah. Samwise the Strong.
yeah. So Samwise the Strong is the vision that he has of himself, and he's like this leader of men, and they they destroy the armies of Mordor, and then he goes on to be like the greatest gardener or something like that, and he like turns all of Mordor green or something. I think my memory is
Yeah, exactly. And we see it in that brilliant movie, the Ralph Bakshi, or not the Ralph Bakshi, whatever the other animation is. I can't remember the creator. What is it again? Oh, that's annoying. It's Rankin Bass.
Rankin Bass. Yeah.
And it really is a Rankin Bass movie. But yeah, you're correct. He felt himself enlarged like a huge warrior and named himself Samwise the Strong. And he had these wild fantasies where he charged across dark lands with a flaming sword, with armies flocking to him to destroy Barad-dûr. And then basically the clouds all rolled away and he started envisioning gardens and all this kind of weird stuff. Now, this is interesting because he doesn't actually have the ring on his finger at this time. He's in Mordor. We'll get into this more a bit later. We'll get into it more later. But he's just holding the ring. But the ring is so powerful when he's in the land where it was created. But yeah, that's it. The year 3019 of the Third Age. That was the last new ring bearer. So there you go.
Very good.
Now,
Let it blossom forth!